Exclusive contract with Feilu Novel Network novel. Youth Joy. Song Qian and my mom are best friends. At the beginning, Gu Han travels through a small joyful world and stays at the home of his mother's best friend Song Qian. Encountered Qiao Yingzi taking a shower and was hit hard by Song Qian. After binding the check.in system, life becomes even more interesting. Song Qian. At first, it wasn't intentional, but later on, I really couldn't help it. Tong Wenjie. Gu Han Kai made me realize what true reliance is. Xiao Meng. Husband, which uniform do you want tonight? Qiao Yingzi. My dream is to become an astronomer and have Gu Han's wife. Huang Zhitao. In Yingzi's room, it's not impossible either. Wang Yidi. Gu Han, you are my eternal male god. Gu Han. Thank you for inviting me, but I am really just an ordinary high school student under someone else's supervision. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. 001, Mom's best friend is Song Qian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gu Han looked at the beautiful woman in front of him with a surprised expression on his face. He thought his mother's best friend was a middle-aged adolescent. After all, she was so well maintained and had law marks on her face. The woman in front of her was dressed in a slim-fitting suit dress, with a graceful figure. Her thighs were long and straight, wrapped in stockings, and her beautiful hair flowed down her shoulders like clouds. When she smiled slightly at the corner of her mouth, the beautiful pear vortex instantly made people feel the rich and intoxicating charm of red wine. There is no trace of time left on her face, and her skin is fair and flawless, like a young girl. It's hard to imagine that this is already a woman of 30.7 or 8 years old. You're Gu Han, right? Hello, I'm your mother's best friend Song Qian. Judging from your appearance, you don't remember me anymore, do you? When you were a child, I even hugged you when you were just full of milk. Song Qian smiled and played with a strand of hair next to her pretty face with her jade fingers. Song Qian, why does this name sound a bit familiar? Gu Han muttered to himself, without thinking too much, and greeted Song Qian with a smile, hello Aunt Song. Gu Han, your parents are going abroad to work for a year and have entrusted me to take care of you. Next, you will move to my house to live for a period of time. Song Qian looked at Gu Han with a smile on her face, feeling a bit puzzled. Her best friend said that Gu Han was a child who was cynical, had a loose personality, and had a bit of a bad teenage style, which made her bear more with him. But Gu Han in front of her, with a straight figure, a handsome face and a gentle expression, could not help but feel good about him, which was not like what his mother said. But she didn't know that the young man in front of her was not the original Gu Han at all. He was just a reborn person who had occupied the original owner's body, and of course, his personality changed greatly. My daughter is the same age as you, named Qiao Yingzi. She is also in her 3rd year of high school this year. When you are together, we have something in common, so we can definitely get along well. She has gone out to play with her classmates now. Your mother is my best friend, don't worry, I will treat you like my own child. As Song Qian was speaking, her phone suddenly rang. After hanging up on the phone for a few words, Song Qian looked at Gu Han with an apologetic expression in her eyes. Gu Han, I'm sorry, Auntie has some last-minute matters and can't take you home. I'll give you a car and the key, and the address is 202, Building 7, Shuxiang Yayuan. You go over first, and when you come back tonight, Auntie will cook a welcome banquet for you. Gu Han smiled and waved his hand, Aunt Song, I'm sorry to bother you for so long. You just need to keep busy with your own business. Song Qian felt that the young man in front of her was not as stubborn as her best friend had said, and she felt relieved in her heart. As instructed by Song Qian, he got into the taxi. As soon as the car door closed, Gu Han's innocent smile faded from his face. He lazily straightened his legs, rested his head on his hands, and his eyes were casual with a hint of mockery. Interesting, I didn't expect this cheap mom's best friend to be Song Qian from Shaohuanxi, murmured the corner of her mouth. Song Qian added Qiao Yingzi, and he already knew where he had been reborn. Song Qian is a great beauty, and Qiao Yingzi is a little beauty. The day when I live with two beautiful women, one big and one small, is really exciting. Opening the door of Song Qian's house, Gu Han looked at the surrounding environment. It was nice, although there were only two people living there. Song Qian kept the house organized, warm and elegant, looking very comfortable in people's hearts. Before walking to the bathroom, Gu Han was eager to go to the bathroom. Without hesitation, he reached for the door handle. In the bathroom, Qiao Yingzi had just put on a white nightgown and was pulling off the hem of her skirt. Upon hearing this commotion, she couldn't help but lift her head. Just facing Gu Han's somewhat surprised expression. Ah! Qiao Yingzi let out earth-shattering screams. Gu Han was speechless. Aren't you naked? Is it necessary to exaggerate like this? In response to Gu Han, there was a pile of discarded shower gel, shampoo, and a small piece of clothing. Immediately after, there was a deafening sound of the door closing. Qiao Yingzi angrily closed the door, feeling scared later on. She trembled and locked the door, quickly went to get her phone, ready to call the police. What should she do if that person is the robber who broke into the house for robbery? What should she do if that person becomes interested in her appearance? Before the phone could be dialed out, she saw the message just sent by Song Qian. Yingzi, my mother's friend's son Gu Han is coming to stay at our house for a period of time. He is about the same age as you. If you come back, please help your mother treat him well. Qiao Yingzi was stunned for a moment before finally letting out a sigh of relief. The person outside was not a robber, but the son of her mother's friend. She was not in any danger, and Qiao Yingzi instantly felt relieved. But with a sudden thought, a faint blush spread to Qiao Yingzi's face, and she bit her lips with a shy and distressed expression. Just now, Gu Han, even though he noticed someone in the bathroom, remained silent and didn't know what he had seen. Even if his grades are poor, his character is also so poor. He must not be allowed to live at home. Qiao Yingzi made up her mind and walked out of the bathroom with wet hair and a pretty face. She clenched her fists, just as she had gathered her strength, she was about to speak. Gu Han pointed to a cute little thing on the sofa and casually said, "Your clothes." Qiao Yingzi followed his fingers and instantly broke through the defense, his momentum plummeting for thousands of miles. She collapsed and picked up the cute little thing, her face burning hot, wishing she could find a crack to crawl in. This kind of clothing should be properly packed and not thrown around casually. You are a girl, you need to pay attention to your appearance. The admonitory words reached Qiao Yingzi's ear, and she couldn't help but blush and nod, "I won't. Next time." Halfway through the conversation, she suddenly realized that her eyes were angry and her chest couldn't help but rise and fall. "If it weren't for you, how could I have done such a thing? Can't you just say a word when you enter the bathroom?" Gu Han shrugged and said, "When I went in, you didn't say there was anyone inside." Qiao Yingzi glared angrily at Gu Han and said, "I didn't know anyone else would come to my house. Aunt Song said you went out to play with friends, how do I know you're at home?" Qiao Yingzi gritted her silver teeth slightly and said, "You're using strong language to argue. What's going on? Yingzi, what's the conflict between you and Gu Han?" At this moment, Song Qian opened the door and returned, looking at the two of them in surprise. 002, Activation of Check.in System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before Gu Han could speak, Qiao Yingzi hurriedly said, "Mom, it's nothing." How embarrassed is she to talk to her mother about being peeked at while changing clothes? Why are you talking to Gu Han like this? Song Qian was a bit skeptical. Gu Han said calmly, "Perhaps Yingzi has a slight misunderstanding of me." Song Qian frowned slightly and thought of the rumors about Gu Han, thinking that Qiao Yingzi had a bad impression of Gu Han because of those words. She said earnestly, "Yingzi, you can't follow the crowd because some rumors have preconceived feelings towards Gu Han. You need to see with your own eyes what kind of person Gu Han is." Qiao Yingzi pouted and looked reluctant. How should she tell her mother that the guy in front of her who looks like a human is really not a good person? "Aunt Song, why don't we just forget about it? Yingzi doesn't like me, and I can't delay her college entrance exam just because of my presence. I'm already an adult, and I can take care of myself alone." Gu Han let out a light sigh and spoke very understanding. "How can this be done?" Song Qian immediately retorted, "Although you are an adult, in my eyes, you are still a child. Besides, you have already transferred to Chunfeng Middle School. If you don't live in my house, where else can you live?" She walked up to Qiao Yingzi and Qian pointed her forehead, "Go and apologize to Gu Han. Why are you so immature today?" Qiao Yingzi was extremely aggrieved, looking at Song Qian. His words of complaint reached his throat and he still swallowed them. She reluctantly was pushed to Gu Han by Song Qian, her mouth tightly closed and she remained silent. "You child." Song Qian was really a bit angry. "Aunt Song, if you apologize, you don't have to worry." "Don't worry, Yingzi and I will definitely get along well in the future." Gu Han interrupted her words and smiled, extending his right hand to Qiao Yingzi. "Yingzi, are you right?" He smiled heartily, but in Qiao Yingzi's eyes, this smile was extremely despicable. Qiao Yingzi glared at Gu Han with hatred, and her soft little hand lightly touched Gu Han's palm before quickly retracting. Song Qian was very pleased to see the scene of two people living in harmony, and instructed Qiao Yingzi to take Gu Han to his room and then go cook. As soon as she arrived at the room, Qiao Yingzi immediately closed the door and looked like a little tiger, wishing she could eat Gu Han. "You didn't see anything just now, remember?" What Song Qian said made her realize that it was unrealistic to drive Gu Han away. She can only let the matter in the bathroom pass as soon as possible. Gu Han said indifferently, "I didn't see anything from the beginning." Qiao Yingzi was thinking about what kind of harsh words to say next, but when she heard Gu Han's answer, she was stunned and said, "Ah! What tricks are you playing?" She looked at Gu Han with a pair of big black and white eyes full of suspicion. "If you want to relax her guard and make yourself forget what this bad guy did, then he's got the wrong number. I'm not interested in watching a washboard-like tablet," Gu Han said lightly. In fact, although Qiao Yingzi's figure is not as good as Song Qian's, the girl's pure and youthful charm has a charming charm. It's just that this girl's attitude towards the film is so bad, of course he wants to suppress her arrogance. Qiao Yingzi's face was scorching hot, both shy and angry. She spoke word by word, "Gu Han, you stinky rascal, I must kick you out of home." After finishing a dinner in this seemingly calm but actually turbulent atmosphere, Gu Han had just returned to his room and lay in bed when a mechanical sound rang out in his brain. Ding! The check.in system is binding. Has the host started checking in? Gu Han immediately sat up and couldn't wait to silently recite, "Sign in. Host's first day check.in, receive a beginner gift package, reward host with divine-level driving skills." A warm current rushed into Gu Han's brain. After absorbing and integrating it, he instantly felt a sensation that he could manipulate it like a toy car, not to mention a sports car, an airplane, a tank, or even an aircraft carrier. This skill is impressive, but what is its use for him now? Gu Han can't resist roast that he doesn't even have a bicycle. Ding! The host's check.in gift has been received, and a white Porsche 911 and driver's license have been obtained. The car key and driver's license have been placed in the host's luggage compartment. After taking out the car key and driver's license from the suitcase, Gu Han couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth. Who wouldn't like the golden finger? With a check.in system and his abilities, his future will only be smooth sailing. The next morning, the sun was shining brightly, and birds were chirping outside the window. Ah! Sleeping soundly, Gu Han was awakened by a scream. He rubbed his sleepy eyes and opened the door, only to see Qiao Yingzi's tail rushing out like a fire. He couldn't help but joke, "Early in the morning, Yingzi, have you started practicing your voice because your grades have declined and you want to take the art school entrance exam?" Song Qian left early in the morning, and at this moment, only the two of them were at home, and Qiao Yingzi had no worries. She had a small face and spoke solemnly. "Please call me Qiao Yingzi. We're not familiar. At school, don't even say you know me." Seeing that he was almost late, Gu Han still looked relaxed and at ease, and Qiao Yingzi's teeth were itching. If it weren't for this person, she wouldn't have tossed and turned all night and missed the morning alarm. But this culprit is not affected at all. Qiao Yingzi snorted coldly, "Also, even if my grades have declined, I am still 100, no, 10,000 times better than you. What qualifies the guy who always ranks last to speak for her?" After finishing speaking, she threw her ponytail and left proudly. "That's not necessarily." Gu Han murmured to himself, with a hint of a smile in his eyes. If this girl is suppressed in her proudest field, her reaction should be very interesting. At Chunfeng Middle School, Qiao Yingzi had a thin layer of sweat on her face, her cheeks turned red, and she caught up with her best friend Huang Zhitao, panting heavily. Huang Zhitao looked at Qiao Yingzi with concern. "Yingzi, why did you come so late today? You were almost late." "Don't mention it." Qiao Yingzi pouted and her face was gloomy. The two were chatting as a red Ferrari drove into the campus. Ji Yangyang got off the car and accidentally hit Huang Zhitao with his backpack, causing a fight with Fang Yifan. Just as everyone's attention was focused here, a white Porsche 911 also drove in and stopped not far away, diverting the attention of many people. Gu Han got off the car and looked at Ji Fang and the two of them who were fighting hard not far away. They lazily leaned against the car, their mouths curved. "Stop fighting, if you want to fight, go to the dance studio and fight," he said loudly. 003, Resigning Li Meng. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The students around were stunned for a moment and burst into loud laughter. Ji Yangyang and Fang Yifan couldn't fight anymore. Next to Qiao Yingzi, a girl saw Gu Han and couldn't help but brighten her eyes. She murmured, "I thought Ji Yangyang was already handsome enough, but I didn't expect there to be a more handsome boy in our school than Ji Yangyang. Strange, I haven't seen him before. What's the use of being just handsome?" Qiao Yingzi turned her face, "It's just a matter of gold and jade outside, with a scum in it. Of course, being handsome is useful. That boy, if he were to debut as a celebrity and speak with such humor, many girls would definitely like him." Qiao Yingzi didn't speak now, even if she disliked Gu Han, she couldn't say he wasn't good-looking. No matter how good-looking he is, he cannot conceal his evil nature. Qiao Yingzi's cheeks bulged as she thought. Over there, Ji Yangyang and Fang Yifan approached Gu Han with an unpleasant expression on their faces. "We're fighting, what are you talking about?" "That's right, what class are you in?" Gu Han chuckled lightly and didn't speak. He wanted to roast about that sentence in his previous life. Just then, a tall and exquisitely made-up beauty walked over holding a file box. "Ji Yangyang, Fang Yifan, you have made a name for yourself. Besides fighting and fighting, do you still want to bully other classmates?" "Teacher Li, we don't have it." Fang Yifan shouted loudly. He turned around and saw the white Porsche 911 behind Gu Han, his eyes lit up. He pointed at Gu Han and said, "Teacher Li, he drove into school and even mocked the two of us. We didn't want to fight him, we just wanted to argue with him." Ji Yangyang also nodded and said, "That's right, we didn't provoke him. He came to provoke us first. Even so, fighting is not right. Also, I have resigned from school, you don't need to call me teacher anymore. In the future, Teacher Pan Shui will lead you. Do you know how to avoid causing trouble?" Li Meng rubbed her temples and looked not far away. He has already come over, she said. Pan Shui hurriedly ran over from afar, looking reluctant. Teacher Li, have you really resigned? Li Meng sighed and nodded. She has a compelling reason. Teacher Pan, I'll leave first. Looking at the goddess's distant figure, Pan Shui turned around and his tone was also a bit off. Gu Han, right. Do you know that driving into school violates school rules? On your first day at school, you violated the school rules. What is your parents' phone number? I need to communicate with them well. Ji Yang, and Fang Yifan couldn't help but laugh with schadenfreude. Teacher Pan, does our school still have this school rule? Gu Han looked surprised. What are you pretending to be? Qiao Yingzi rolled her eyes as she approached. Which school allows students to drive into the school? Gu Han pointed to Ji Yang, and when I saw him driving his car into the school, I thought Chunfeng Middle School didn't have this rule, so I followed suit and drove the car in. You're making excuses. Ji Yang didn't want to take the blame. Which legitimate student union would drive to school? You also know this is not serious. Pan Shui couldn't help but say. Ji Yang's words were blocked before he realized that he had scolded himself. Whose cars are you driving? The car owner wants to call out and lend the car to a child who is still in school. It's just ridiculous. Ji Yang snorted nonchalantly. He didn't care about finding his parents. This car belongs to his uncle, and his uncle will not punish him for it. Ji Yang looked at Gu Han with a hint of provocation in his eyes. He doesn't believe in Gu Han and is not afraid of being asked for parents. Gu Han looked calm and said, Teacher Pan, I'm sorry. My parents are abroad, and I bought this car myself. You bought it yourself, use your parents' money to buy it yourself. Fang Yifan didn't believe Gu Han's words. Pan Shui also felt that this possibility was the greatest, and his impression of Gu Han was a bit worse. In his heart, Gu Han had become a cynical and extravagant playboy. I'm sorry, the money for buying a car was earned by myself through self-reliant stock trading. Did you really earn this money yourself? Pan Shui couldn't help but ask. If he really made over 1 million yuan from stock trading, Gu Han would still be a financial genius. What am I doing by telling such meaningless lies? Gu Han smiled. The system has already arranged the background of the reward when distributing it. Besides, although this is the world of television dramas, the economic and technological trends are not much different from the macro level of the real world a few years ago. With years of prophetic advantage, it is not difficult for him to make money by trading stocks. Pan Shui had already believed Gu Han's words, and he nodded. Driving into school is your first offense and you're not clear about the school rules. I won't pursue it this time, but why are you mocking Ji Yang and Fang Yifan? If I don't do that, they are still fighting now, Gu Han replied simply. What are you joking about? Fang Yifan was puzzled and mocked them, saying that their fight was as soft as dancing, causing them to lose face in front of the whole school. The purpose was to stop them from fighting. Ji Yang also clenched his fist and said, Teacher Pan, don't believe his lies. But you stopped fighting because of me, that's a fact, Gu Han said casually. The two were instantly sunk. Pan Shui's expression also softened. Qiao Yingzi, take Gu Han to our class and familiarize yourself with the situation in our class. Qiao Yingzi was taken aback for a moment, unsure of what she had thought. With a flick of her braid, she snorted softly, come with me. Ji Yang and Fang Yifan were almost dumbfounded. You pulled at me and I pulled at you. With a sense of luck in their hearts, they tentatively stepped forward and prepared to walk towards the direction of the class. Pan Shui's voice sounded like a devil behind the two of them. Ji Yang, Fang Yifan, come with me to the office. P.S. The author's new book has set sail, and we hope that readers can provide more support. Please have more monthly tickets, flowers, and reviews to keep the author motivated. In terms of updates, the author has over 100,000 words of saved manuscripts, with a huge amount of content. After it was put on the shelves, it went viral and kept up with its promises. Evaluation vote. Flowers. The important thing to say 3 times is that gift data is the indicator on which the author relies for survival. Please make sure to give more gifts. 004, Yingzi, are you all living together yet unfamiliar? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the corridor, Qiao Yingzi walked absent-mindedly ahead, catching a glimpse of the person behind her from the corner of her eye, only to find Gu Han leisurely looking around. Although there were only 2 people, he really didn't mean to say a word to himself. Qiao Yingzi pursed her lips and her footsteps intensified with force. Gu Hanjing looked at the campus in this plot with emotion, and suddenly heard Qiao Yingzi's movements. He looked up in surprise at Qiao Yingzi, not knowing what she was angry about again. But Gu Han also had no intention of comforting her. Qiao Yingzi walked forward with her head down and reached a corner. Suddenly, a basketball collided and Qiao Yingzi stumbled and was about to fall to the ground. Ah! Qiao Yingzi screamed and tightly closed her eyes, afraid to face the scene. But she didn't experience the pain she had imagined. A strong arm wrapped around her slender waist and carried her into her own arms. Qiao Yingzi was tightly pressed against Gu Han's chest, and the heat was transmitted to her through the thin school uniform. Her small face immediately turned red, like the autumn sunset. You let go of me. Qiao Yingzi quickly pushed Gu Han with her hand, but Gu Han's arm was like an iron hoop, motionless. Gu Han. Qiao Yingzi was about to say that she was getting angry when she heard Gu Han's cold voice. I bumped into someone and didn't even say an apology. She looked up and with the other hand, Gu Han grabbed the boy who had picked up the basketball and was about to leave. The person struggled fiercely with a displeased expression on his face. Didn't he fall? Why should I apologize? His mouth kept opening and closing, full of impure words. Qiao Yingzi saw the person's face clearly, and her expression suddenly changed. She pulled Gu Han's sleeve. Ignoring ambiguity, she tiptoed to Gu Han's ear and whispered, Gu Han, why don't we just forget about it? This person is a sports student, and their class is very crowded. Gu Han's ears felt a little itchy from the heat generated by this little girl's breath, and he unconsciously moved his neck. In an instant, a soft touch brushed against the corner of the lips. Qiao Yingzi's eyes widened wide, and she covered her mouth with her hand, feeling both embarrassed and angry. This is her first kiss. Thinking of this, tears welled up in Qiao Yingzi's eyes. Gu Han curled his lips to divert Qiao Yingzi's attention. He let go of Qiao Yingzi and twisted his other hand, causing the boy's wrist to almost dislocate. He screamed in pain and fell to the ground in embarrassment. Gu Han looked down at him from a high position and said, Your family didn't teach you what manners are, so I was burdened to discipline you for them. The boy still wanted to open his mouth, but looking at the bruise on his wrist, he got up and walked silently. At this point, Qiao Yingzi had already run far away. Gu Han thought Qiao Yingzi had already left, but he didn't go far. He found Qiao Yingzi waiting for him in front. Her small mouth was red and dripping, as if it had been forcefully rubbed. Before Gu Han could speak, Qiao Yingzi spoke with a wary expression on her face. When we arrive in class later, don't say we know each other, let alone we live together. If Teacher Li arranges a seat for you, you can sit wherever it is farthest from me. She originally wanted to leave, but Li Meng asked her to take Gu Han to class. If she didn't bring it, she would definitely be questioned. She really doesn't want to get involved with Gu Han at all now. In class, the students surrounded Gu Han in groups, and the scene that happened at the school gate had already spread like wildfire. They were all very curious about Gu Han, chattering and asking questions. Gu Han, you really made over 1,000,000 yuan by trading stocks yourself. You're really amazing, aren't you? Gu Han, where did you go to school before? Qiao Yingzi returned to her seat and caught a glimpse of Gu Han, who was adept at dealing with her classmates, with a pretty face covered in frost. "Yingzi, do you know this new Gu Han?" On the side, Huang Zhitao asked curiously. "Qiao Yingzi is beautiful and has good grades, and there are many people in school who like her. I have never seen Qiao Yingzi have such a strong emotion towards any boy before." Qiao Yingzi was surprised and quickly denied, "Tao Zi, don't guess, I don't know him." "Is that right?" Huang Zhitao's beautiful eyes flashed with a faint doubt, but seeing Qiao Yingzi's appearance, he didn't ask further, but changed the topic. "Have you finished writing the physics paper you sent me before? The last big question is too difficult, and I have no clue." Qiao Yingzi nodded and flipped through her backpack. "That question is really difficult. I've been thinking about it for a long time before I finally came up with an idea. I'll explain it to you on the paper." But she searched for half a day and couldn't find the paper. Recalling the scene of being late and hastily packing up this morning, Qiao Yingzi bit her lips in frustration and said, "It's broken. I left my paper at home." "Ah!" Huang Zhitao exclaimed in surprise as she glanced at the group leader who was collecting papers and lowered her voice. "Don't you still know the character of a physics teacher? No matter who doesn't submit their homework and what the reason is, they will be kicked out and punished by him. And the first class is physics." Qiao Yingzi was also flustered. She was a top student, and it would be so embarrassing if she were kicked out by the physics teacher and punished for standing. Watching the group leader getting closer and closer, Qiao Yingzi became increasingly panicked, but there was nothing she could do. "Qiao Yingzi, where is your paper?" the group leader asked in confusion. "Weren't you the first to submit the paper before?" I left my paper at home," Qiao Yingzi explained dejectedly, although she knew that the physics teacher never listened to others' explanations. "Ah! Then you're in trouble." The group leader gave Qiao Yingzi a sympathetic look. Qiao Yingzi lay on the table in frustration, her head buried in her arms, like a little turtle. As if she didn't look, the fate of punishment would not come. Knock. The sound of the desktop being tapped rang out, and Qiao Yingzi lifted her head. Under her somewhat messy hair was a coquettish face that was muffled and slightly flushed. She said fiercely, "What are you doing? Didn't you say you had to pretend not to know her at school? Also, if it weren't for yesterday's incident, how could she have slept late and missed the alarm clock, and left home in a panic in the morning forgetting to bring her homework?" Gu Han held a familiar scroll in his hand and raised it, his lips slightly curling. "Is this your attitude towards a great benefactor who can save you from punishment and save you from hardship?" "My paper." Qiao Yingzi's eyes lit up and she reached out her little hand to grab it. Without hesitation, she spoke up, "Why is my paper in your hands? Gu Hanju is a master, but how can Ren Qiao Yingzi stand on tiptoe? He just can't touch it. I saw it at the dining table this morning, so I casually." As soon as Gu Han spoke, Qiao Yingzi knew the bad news and quickly covered Gu Han's mouth. His small hands were soft and fair, with the fragrance of citrus-flavored hand cream. But she was too late to cover up. All the students in the class made strange noises. Huang Zhitao watched the scene as the beautiful girl tiptoed to cover the mouth of the handsome young man, her expression seeming coquettish and angry, while the young man's eyes carried a teasing smile, exuding a refined demeanor. It's like a scene replicated from an anime. She couldn't help but speak up, "Yingzi, you all live together now. Is this still considered unfamiliar? P.S. The author's new book has set sail, and we hope that readers can provide more support. Please have more monthly tickets, flowers, and reviews to keep the author motivated. In terms of updates, the author has over 100,000 words of saved manuscripts, with a huge amount of content. After it was put on the shelves, it went viral and kept up with its promises. Evaluation vote. Flowers. The important thing to say 3 times is that gift data is the indicator on which the author relies for survival. Please make sure to give more gifts. 005, Song Qian, borrowing wine to calm sorrow. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After this commotion, everyone in the class learned that the new and talented transfer student Gu Han was staying at Qiao Yingzi's house. Even the homeroom teacher Pan Shui, upon learning about it, specially arranged Gu Han as Qiao Yingzi's desk mate to take care of him more. Feeling depressed for Qiao Yingzi, she didn't feel like talking all day. She lay on the table, watching the girls in her class repeatedly pass by Gu Han's desk, feeling a wave of indignation in her heart. You don't know Gu Han's true face naturally. Qiao Yingzi developed a sense of loneliness where the whole world was drunk and I woke up alone. So, Gu Han stayed at Song Qian's house. Song Qian is very strict with her daughter Qiao Yingzi. She treats her parents overseas, but Gu Han, who has no relatives around her, takes extra care of her. She asks for warmth and does not even say a word of importance. Qiao Yingzi felt a bit jealous, but at the same time, he relaxed. My mother has paid more attention to Gu Han, so naturally she has less control over her treatment. Gu Han has not been idle for the past few days. He first signed in for a start-up fund of 100,000 yuan, and then signed in for a financial newspaper from the future that records a significant rise in stocks. After some operation, he already has 500,000 yuan in capital. On this day, Song Qian was cooking in the kitchen when the doorbell rang outside. Gu Han happened to be in the living room and casually took the video phone, revealing a large face with a scruffy beard. Yingzi, opened the door. The man realized that it was not Qiao Yingzi who was connected to the video, and was wary, asking, "Wait, who are you? What is your relationship with Yingzi?" This person is exactly Qiao Weidong, the former husband of Song Qian. As a daughter slave, when I think of my daughter in her prime of 18, the stinky guy in the video has a very deceitful appearance. Early love, dropout, abortion, car accident. The plot from those youth movies vividly appeared in Qiao Weidong's mind. Of course, Gu Han knew who he was, but at this moment he pretended not to know and politely greeted Qiao Weidong, "Hello uncle, Yingzi and I." At this point, he deliberately paused and said, "It's okay, don't misunderstand. I don't know who you are. What's up with finding Yingzi? Yingzi is still asleep, I'll go call her up." Qiao Weidong's face turned pale, and his thoughts slipped all the way in some scenes that made him uneasy. He tried to calm himself down and said, "Who the hell are you?" Gu Han chuckled lightly, didn't speak anymore, and hung up on the video. Qiao Weidong became increasingly uneasy as he thought about it. Coincidentally, a resident opened the access control and was about to enter the building. Qiao Weidong aggressively pushed him away and stormed in. The person originally wanted to stop him, but when they saw Qiao Weidong's ugly face, they stopped talking again. Qiao Weidong arrived at the door of Song Qian's house, with a calm face and forcefully tapping the door. He thought Gu Han wouldn't dare to open the door, but he didn't expect the door to open just after he took a few taps. Behind the door, Gu Han was completely free, with a smile on his face, looking at him with the demeanor of a master. This appearance, in Qiao Weidong's eyes, was a complete provocation, which made him feel angry. Unable to resist any longer, without saying a word, he raised his fist and greeted Gu Han's face. Gu Han easily took Qiao Weidong's fist and tried to persuade him, but in reality, he added fuel to the fire. "Uncle, if we have anything to say, Yingzi definitely doesn't want us to do this. You dare to mention Yingzi?" Qiao Weidong became even more angry. Although he couldn't fight, he still used all his strength to beat Gu Han. "Qiao Weidong, what are you doing?" Song Qian in the kitchen also heard the commotion outside. As soon as she came out, she saw Qiao Weidong fighting against Gu Han. Gu Han struggled to support himself, looking shaky and on the verge of collapse. She didn't know that this was a deliberate illusion made by Gu Han. The real loser is actually Qiao Weidong. "Why are you crazy when you come to my house?" Song Qian's face was full of anger. "How did you come in? Get out of here." Song Qian. Qiao Weidong stopped his hand and demanded, I thought you weren't at home, but I didn't expect you to be there. How do you become a mother? You said you can give anything for your daughter. But the result is good. You let a little rascal, and a young man live in the same room. If something bad happens, can you bear the responsibility? Song Qian widened her eyes in surprise and trembled with anger. Dirty people think dirty things. Qiao Weidong, why are your thoughts so dirty? Gu Han frowned and looked disapproving. Uncle Qiao, you may not trust me, but you must trust the character of Aunt Song and Yingzi. Do you think Aunt Song and Yingzi would tolerate and do such things in your eyes? Qiao Weidong was speechless for a moment, and his anger dissipated slightly. He also realized that something had gone wrong. Just for a while, he couldn't react. However, to make matters worse, Qiao Yingzi also came out. Crystal tears streamed out of her eyes, and she stubbornly looked at Qiao Weidong, heartbroken. Dad, in your eyes, am I this kind of person? After speaking, she rushed out the door and said, I won't talk to you anymore. Yingzi, listen to me explain. Qiao Weidong shouted his daughter's name and chased after her. Song Qian stood in a daze for a while, suddenly feeling extremely tired. She stepped back and sat on the sofa, ignoring the loss of her slippers. She landed on the ground with a pair of white and tender stockings and jade feet, her spine curved, her snow-white cheeks buried in her palm, and she remained silent. Water droplets fell on the carpet under her feet, soaking in dark hues. She resigned from her teaching position at Chunfeng Middle School and became a teacher in a training class, in order to have more energy to devote to her daughter. Although she no longer has feelings for Qiao Weidong, at least after a married relationship, she didn't expect Qiao Weidong to see her like this. After a while, Song Qian straightened up. Adults are like this, even if their emotions collapse, they cannot consume too much time because there is still life to face. She had just lifted her head when a hand with distinct joints appeared in front of her, carrying a glass of water. The owner of this hand is sitting beside her, providing silent companionship. Gu Han, didn't you go out to find Yingzi? Song Qian was a bit surprised and took a sip of the water glass. The temperature was neither cold nor hot, and it tasted very comfortable. Uncle Qiao has already chased me out, Gu Han said with a warm and pure smile on his face. Yingzi probably doesn't really want to see me now. Song Qian nodded and rolled a strand of beautiful hair behind her ear, feeling somewhat dejected for some reason. As for why she was gloomy, she didn't know either. And Gu Han spoke again, besides Yingzi, Aunt Song, you also need someone to accompany you now. Can you drink alcohol? Perhaps it's because of emotions, or maybe it's because Gu Han is not as gentle and considerate as a child of this age. Song Qian took out a glass of red wine, poured herself a full glass, hesitated for a moment, and poured Gu Han a bottom glass of red wine. She drank one cup after another without saying a word, and soon her face flushed and her eyes were moist and hazy. After finishing a bottle, Song Qian had to get up to get the wine, but as soon as she stood up, she stumbled and fell into the arms of Gu Han, who had been guarding by the side. 006. After waking up, Song Qian received a call from her best friend. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Auntie Song, you're drunk. When Xiangrawayu was in her arms, and Gu Han's voice became low. Let go of me, I can still drink, Song Qian muttered, restlessly moving. Compared to Qiao Yingzi, Song Qian's graceful curves and soft and fragrant body undoubtedly have more feminine charm. Gu Han was also polite and easily picked up Song Qian horizontally, sending her back to her room. Of course, Gu Han openly ate a lot of the tofu that should be eaten. Putting Song Qian on the bed, Gu Han was about to get up. His two arms hooked around Gu Han's neck and pulled him down, bringing water to moisten his red lips. Gu Han, who could easily lift Song Qian horizontally, seemed to have lost his strength and fell down. The next day, Song Qian was awakened by the ringing of a video call. When she woke up, her headache was splitting and she connected to the video in a daze. "Song Qian, what's wrong with your appearance?" The mocking voice came from the end of the phone. "Did you go to the nightclub last night to soak in fresh meat?" The memories of last night came back to her, and Song Qian opened her eyes wide. The soreness on her body also reminded her of something absurd that had happened last night. Blood surged all over her body, and Song Qian's cheeks were scorching hot, so hot that she could boil boiled eggs. On her phone, she is her best friend. Outside her phone, she glanced slightly to the left and saw the sleeping big boy on the pillow, who was the son of her best friend. Song Qian carefully adjusted the angle of her phone, not daring to let Gu Han in the mirror. If there were a crack on the ground, Song Qian would jump in without hesitation at this moment. "What kind of thing is this? Song Qian, why is your face so red?" "Forget it, I won't joke with you anymore. How did Gu Han perform at your house? I'm telling you, you don't have to worry about anything. This kid is very mischievous. Just treat him like your own child and be strict when you need to." My best friend chattered incessantly, but the content of these words made Song Qian even more devastated. Her best friend asked her to take good care of her son, and as a result, she took care of him like this. She already remembered that yesterday, it was Gu Han who kindly comforted her, but how could she be so insane? Finally, she casually hung up the video, and Song Qian breathed a sigh of relief. She turned her head to look at the young man who was still sleeping, feeling complex. She quietly picked up clothes and put them on one by one, tiptoed on her tender white toes, and walked silently towards the door. Although Gu Han was very sorry for what happened, she really didn't know how to face it and could only pretend that nothing had happened. By the way, something suddenly came to her mind. Song Qian's long, sour legs almost bent and fell to the ground. She quickly helped the cabinet to stabilize her figure. Damn it, she still has to go to the pharmacy. She couldn't afford to add a younger brother or sister to Yingzi. The more she thought about it, the hotter Song Qian's cheeks became and she ran away from the room. The door was gently closed, and Gu Han, who was supposed to be asleep, now opened his eyes. Beside him, there seemed to be a lingering fragrance of Song Qian's hair. Gu Han yawned leisurely and then fell asleep. The days ahead are long, there are many things that don't need to be rushed. After waking up, Gu Han returned to his room and signed in for today's reward. Ding, the host's check that IN gift has been received, and you will receive a set of basic first aid skills. Just like when he achieved divine-level driving skills that day, a warm current flooded into Gu Han's brain. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation, Heimlich first aid, basic hemostasis, bandaging, and fixed handling skills, another set of skills that may seem useful but actually have limited opportunities to use. Gu Han was very helpless. He was wearing Shaohuanqi, not a war movie or a disaster movie. What about divine-level driving skills? You also need to abide by traffic rules. And with this basic first aid method, where can we save the injured in this peaceful world? System, I have a suggestion for you. You have arranged the background for the physical reward, but why can't you also arrange the background for the skill reward? Just say I once attended a tutoring class in Hawaii, where I learned 8 languages, pan-vehicle driving skills, and shot myself in the head 800 miles away. So he doesn't have to work hard to go out and buy books to improve his skill background. The system did not respond to him. Gu Han sighed helplessly and went out to the bookstore to buy a bunch of books about first aid. He just returned and put them on the bookshelf. Suddenly, Qiao Yingzi knocked on the door outside the door. Gu Han, open the door for me. Gu Han opened the door, and Qiao Yingzi's angry and somewhat embarrassed face came into his eyes. Why did you tell my dad that I'm your girlfriend? Knowing this news from her father's mouth, Qiao Yingzi's mood was very complicated. There is a bit of resentment, confusion, and pride. But these emotions cannot compare to anger. Upon Gu Han's arrival, her life was completely chaotic. She originally wanted her parents to remarry, but with yesterday's incident, the distance between them deepened. Gu Han frowned and said, "I never said such a thing. You're still sophistry." Qiao Yingzi widened her glasses. Gu Han casually recounted the dialogue of the scene at that time, only omitting his own small actions. Qiao Yingzi was speechless and could only nitpick. "Why did you tell my dad that we have nothing to do with each other? Isn't this place without 300 taels of silver?" Gu Han raised his eyebrows and smiled frivolously. "Do you mean, hello uncle, I have a relationship with Qiao Yingzi when I say to your father?" Qiao Yingzi's face turned red with displeasure. 007, Fang Yifan was given artificial respiration by a physical education teacher. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The next day, the school held a oath-taking ceremony, and parents were also required to attend. Song Qian drove with Qiao Yingzi and Gu Han. Along the way, the atmosphere was surprisingly quiet. Qiao Yingzi noticed the abnormality and spoke up after realizing it. "Mom, did you have a conflict with Gu Han?" From morning till now, Song Qian and Gu Han have not said a word, nor even seen Gu Han in person. Previously, Song Qian had endless reminders to Gu Han. "Where is it?" Song Qian was startled and quickly coughed twice. "I just have a slight discomfort in my throat and don't want to talk." Qiao Yingzi wanted to ask again, but was interrupted by Song Qian. "The school has arrived." Gu Han got off the car and stood not far away. He saw Song Qian get off the car and go up to get her bag. "Aunt Song, let me help you carry your bag," he said. His hand seemed to accidentally touch Song Qian's little finger. Song Qian's hand trembled, as if she had been burned by fire. She suddenly looked up at him, suspecting that Gu Han had intended it, but only saw him with a bewildered expression. Song Qian quickly withdrew and said, "No need, I'll just take it myself." After speaking, she walked forward eagerly, wearing high heels. As soon as she saw Gu Han, she thought of the scene from last night and felt very embarrassed. "I can't pretend that nothing happened for a while. What exactly is the conflict between you and my mother? How do I feel like my mother is a bit avoiding you?" Behind her, Qiao Yingzi asked with a skeptical expression on her face. Perhaps Aunt Song noticed that I was too handsome, so she felt embarrassed to look at me. Gu Han spread out his hand and said. Qiao Yingzi chuckled and cursed, "Bah! Narcissistic. This reason is unbelievable." At the oath-taking ceremony, Fang Yifan climbed onto the ceiling of the audience to take photos, but accidentally slipped down. Class teacher Pan Shui, Fang Yifan's parents Fang Yuan and Tong Wenjie all anxiously gathered around. Qiao Yingzi stood on the side, feeling even more at a loss. At this moment, she saw Gu Han standing out in the crowd, even in his school uniform, standing tall like a pine tree and standing out like a flock of chickens. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. "Gu Han, there are so many first aid books on your bookshelf, there must be a way, right? Come and help Fang Yifan." Fang Yifan was just pretending to be unconscious. Originally, he wanted to find an opportunity to suggest to Qiao Yingzi that he was okay. "I heard Qiao Yingzi seeking help from Gu Han, but suddenly I didn't want to do it again." He still remembers his grudges on the day of the start of school. Fang Yifan suddenly had a plan in his mind, his eyelids closed tightly, and he decided to pretend to be dizzy until the end. Even if Gu Han really knows first aid, he can't wake up a person who pretends to be unconscious. Now everyone in the school is on the playground. If Gu Han's emergency rescue fails and he is fooled by himself, he will lose face. Of course, Gu Han knew about this plot and had no intention of getting involved. He shook his head. "I just bought those books and only flipped through them once. You should wait for professional medical staff to come." At that moment, Pan Shui answered the phone and his face became solemn. "It's broken. The school doctor had a stomachache and took a leave to go back. And the nearest ambulance will take at least 20 minutes to arrive. Fan, my fan. Tong Wenjie almost fainted as she anxiously looked around. Are there any parents here who understand medical skills? Can they come out and help? Fang Yuan and Pan Shui also agreed on the side. The crowd was full of discussions, but no one came forward. Tong Wenjie's face turned pale as if she had seen the last straw to save her life when she saw Gu Han. She was wearing a waist-tight black dress, which was too plump to grip, and her long legs wrapped in stockings were slender and fair. A short head of hair with tassel earrings, paired with exquisite makeup, highlights her capable temperament. At this moment, he stumbled forward and tightly hugged Gu Han's right arm. "Gu, please help me take a look at Fan Fan at home." "I beg you," Tong Wenjie sobbed and looked up at Gu Han, her eyes full of pleading. Tears slid down her small chin, looking very cute. "Don't worry, even if something really happens, I will definitely not blame you." Gu Han reluctantly wanted to take out his arm, which was not appropriate in public. "Aunt Tong, please don't do this." But he exerted a little force and surprisingly didn't lift it, and was held even tighter. "Gu, I beg you, I only have Fang Yifan as my son." Tong Wenjie sobbed, her helplessness and sadness condensed into her furrowed willow eyebrows. "Okay, Aunt Tong, I promise you, let go." Gu Han sighed and looked at Fang Yifan lying on the ground, probably able to guess his thoughts. "Your mother has done this for you, and you are still lying on the ground pretending to be dead. If a child doesn't listen, it's mostly due to a lack of discipline." Gu Han approached and squatted down, pretending to do a thorough examination for Fang Yifan. He is proficient in basic first aid skills and has a good understanding of the human body. He knows how to make people suffer, but onlookers cannot see the problem. Despite this, Fang Yifan still gritted his teeth and pretended to be dead with his eyes closed. "This was chosen by yourself." Gu Han raised his eyebrows slightly and raised his head to the crowd, saying, "He's fine, he just passed out with his breath closed for a moment. Do you know how to do artificial respiration? Just help him smooth his breath." In the crowd, a hostage questioned, "This student, is what you said reliable?" Tong Wenjie and Pan Shui also have some doubts. They heard that drowning requires artificial respiration, but they haven't heard that falling from a height also requires it. "I think what he said may be true," said a weak person in the crowd. "I work as an administrator in the hospital, and I just checked with my classmates' technique, which is very professional and doesn't seem like an outsider at all." "We don't know artificial respiration either," Tong Wenjie and Fang Yuan sighed helplessly. Qiao Yingzi and Huang Zhitao hesitated and glanced at each other. They had learned a bit, but they didn't really want to come out and do artificial respiration for Fang Yifan. Pan Shui took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. "I've learned a little before, let me do it." Fang Yifan is a student in his class, and if something happens, he is dutiful. Fang Yifan lay on the ground, almost unable to jump up. He doesn't want to be given artificial respiration by Teacher Pan. But if he still doesn't wake up after artificial respiration, what should Gu Han do? Thinking of this, the desire to watch Gu Han's jokes overcame the fear of being artificially breathed by Teacher Pan. But at this moment, Gu Han spoke up, "Teacher Pan, your lung capacity may not be enough. To perform artificial respiration for Fang Yifan, the person's lung capacity must be large enough, otherwise it will not be effective." "What does it mean to have a large lung capacity?" Fang Yifan repeated this sentence in his heart. For some reason, his scalp was tingling. "I think Teacher Yuan, the physical education teacher, is quite suitable," Gu Han's voice rang out again. This thunder almost killed Fang Yifan. "Teacher Yuan, that person is tall and muscular, looks like one punch can kill 3 of his teachers." "I'm not quite suitable, right?" Teacher Yuan hesitated a bit. Pan Shui quickly advised, "Teacher Yuan, this is to save people. What is appropriate or not?" Fang Yifan finally couldn't lie down. No, if he lay down again, he would really be artificially breathed by Teacher Yuan, becoming the eternal laughing stock of Chunfeng Middle School. But just as he was about to open his eyes and say he was awake, Gu Hanwen's gentle voice rang in his ear. Aunt Tong, what would you do if Fang Yifan pretended to be unconscious and had nothing to do? 008, Fang Yifan, who didn't eat enough stir-fried pork with bamboo shoots. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Tong Wenjie let out a terrifying sneer and said, pretend to be dizzy. He might feel like he hasn't eaten enough bamboo shoots and stir-fried meat yet. Fang Yifan's heart contracted and he didn't have the courage to get up again. Teacher Yuan, when using artificial respiration, you need to mouth and breathe as long as possible. Do you really want to have artificial respiration with Teacher Yuan? Fang Yifan fell into a painful struggle. His first kiss was intended for the goddess Huang Zhitao. What's wrong with giving it to Teacher Yuan? But if I wake up now, I will definitely be caught by my mother pretending to be unconscious, and my life is in danger. I'm going to start, Teacher Yuan said. Feeling Teacher Yuan's breath getting closer and closer, Fang Yifan gritted his teeth, suddenly opened his eyes, and crawled away from Teacher Yuan's side. I'm awake, don't give me artificial respiration, really, I'm doing great. He would rather be beaten to death by his mother than lose his innocence and be engraved with a pillar of shame as a joke in the spring breeze. Fang Yifan. Tong Wenjie couldn't help but understand, her beautiful eyes wide open. You stand still for me. Her legs were slender, and her white and tender jade feet were wearing high heels, but her speed was a bit slow. She chased after Fang Yifan like a storm. Look, if I don't kill you today, I won't be surnamed Tong. Gu Han looked at this scene, touched his chin, and turned to ask Qiao Yingzi, look, Fang Yifan is now bouncing around and has no problems at all. Am I skilled in medicine? Qiao Yingzi wanted to laugh a bit, but Fang Yifan was her good friend, so it didn't seem very good. She could only endure it and her expression was very strange. Li Meng and Huang Zhitao on the side no longer had such concerns, and their tears of laughter were about to come out. Do you already know that Fang Yifan pretended to be unconscious? Li Meng asked curiously. His performance is too obvious, Gu Han smiled faintly. Even if he didn't know the plot, with his basic first aid skills, Fang Yifan's performance was also full of loopholes, all due to carelessness. Huang Zhitao thought of the scene just now and chuckled again, giving a thumbs up. Gao Ming, Dr. Gu, your medical skills are too advanced. Soon, Fang Yifan was taken away by Tong Wenjie and Fang Yuan with a drooping head and head. The oath-taking ceremony reached the stage of releasing the dream balloon, but Gu Han was not interested in participating and went to the rooftop of the teaching building early. In no time, Qiao Yingzi, who was crying bitterly due to a conflict with Song Qian, and Huang Zhitao, who was comforting her, arrived. Why are you here too? Are you trying to see my joke? Qiao Yingzi is in a bad mood now and her tone is not very good. Yingzi, don't do this. Huang Zhitao advised. But she didn't expect it. Gu Hansha nodded with something serious and said, you're right. I predicted in advance that you would have a bad day today, so I stayed on the rooftop to watch your joke. Qiao Yingzi was actually overwhelmed by him, with a bewildered expression on her face and no time to cry. Huang Zhitao couldn't help but laugh and said, your way of comforting people is too strange. Gu Han also smiled. Why is it that when he speaks the truth, no one believes him? Qiao Yingzi sucked on her red nose and didn't speak. In my heart, my good impression of Gu Han finally outweighed my bad impression. Gu Han, what would you do if your family doesn't understand or support your dreams at all? Qiao Yingzi suddenly asked. Gu Han didn't answer and instead asked, do you know what I want now? What? Qiao Yingzi couldn't help but ask. She is also very curious about this issue. At first, in her eyes, Gu Han was just a bad guy with poor grades and neglectful work, but gradually, Gu Han showed more characteristics in front of him. He knows how to speculate in stocks and even bought a sports car for himself by earning over 1 million yuan. He is also very smart. With just one look at the first aid surgery, he can make the hospital staff admire his professionalism. He is really too mysterious, as if he has endless secrets to uncover. What I want now is to earn 1 billion, Gu Han said calmly. Ah. Qiao Yingzi's mouth opened in a surprised O shape. She thought Gu Han was joking, but his appearance didn't seem like a joke at all. 1 billion, that's too much, isn't it? Huang Zhitao also murmured, this is simply impossible to achieve. If we had this mentality from the beginning, it would have been impossible to achieve. Gu Han looked at Qiao Yingzi. But as long as you do it, you may get what you want. The important thing is to do it, not to worry about these things, to worry about those things. The support and understanding from my family is good, but it won't affect my will. Qiao Yingzi looked at Gu Han in shock and murmured, I want to become a literary figure that day, I want to study the universe, I want to be admitted to the astronomy department of Nanjing University. Then go ahead and do it, Gu Han said briefly. With Qiao Yingzi's experiences in the original plot, he couldn't have let them happen again. Qiao Yingzi suddenly smiled. Although her beautiful face was still adorned with tears, like a dewy pear blossom, she smiled brilliantly. Although there were only 3 short words, it strangely gave her a sense of security. She walked up to the rooftop and shouted loudly towards the bottom. I want to go to Nanjing University. I want to become an astronomer. I want to study the universe. I want to land on Mars. The clear and crisp voice of the young girl was carried far away by the wind and spread far and wide. 009, The Entangled Song Qian. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After staying on the rooftop for a while, Gu Han returned to the classroom with Qiao Yingzi and Huang Zhitao. The girls who usually have a good relationship with Qiao Yingzi and Huang Zhitao immediately gathered around, secretly peeking at Gu Han while chattering and asking where they had just gone. Qiao Yingzi thought of the scene that had just happened on the rooftop, and a smile unconsciously flashed from the corner of her mouth. I won't tell you, it's a secret. Huang Zhitao also smiled and nodded, but his mood was inexplicably low. Qiao Yingzi has dreams, and there is also Gu Han, a friend who helped her regroup when she fell into a downturn. And she had nothing. Why doesn't her mother have a friend like Gu Han's mother who asked Gu Han to stay at her house? In this way, she won't be so lonely anymore. Fang Yifan, how does it taste to stir-fry pork with bamboo shoots? Fang Hoer, does it feel good to be kissed by Teacher Yuan? At this moment, there was suddenly a commotion in the class, accompanied by bursts of laughter. It turned out that Fang Yifan had returned. Nonsense. Fang Yifan's face turned red as he looked at Huang Zhitao, who was also laughing on the side, desperately defending himself. I didn't get kissed by Teacher Yuan. No, it was artificial respiration, not kissing. What are you talking about? Tao Zi, you have to believe me, I am innocent. What are you pulling me for, Fang Yifan? I have nothing to do with you. Huang Zhitao unconsciously glanced at Gu Han and saw that he had no special reaction. She pursed her lips, rolled her beautiful eyes, and said coldly, what innocence. I saw with my own eyes on the playground that you were kissed by Teacher Yuan. That Teacher Yuan, who is 1.8 meters tall and weighs 1.7 meters. That's right, I saw it too. You kissed Teacher Yuan. Fang Yifan's veins burst out and he said, I didn't. Teacher Yuan and I didn't even touch each other. Gu Han smiled and answered, really? I don't believe it. Everyone burst into laughter, and the class was filled with joyful air. This joke is from Chunfeng Middle School, and I'm afraid someone will remember it in 10 years. Fang Yifan finally broke through the defense, although he and Teacher Yuan did not kiss each other. But this reputation is no different from that of a relative. His eyes turned red, and when he saw Gu Han, he immediately shouted loudly. Gu Han, you're despicable. How could you prank me like this? I'm going to fight you. As he spoke, he rolled up his sleeves and was about to charge forward. Fang Yifan, you can't finish it all, Qiao Yingzi quickly stopped. You've already caused enough trouble today. Qiao Yingzi, he made me look like this, and you still speak for him. It's in vain for me to be so good to you before. I had already prepared a birthday gift for you, but now it's gone. Fang Yifan was filled with anger. He had just been harshly scolded by his parents. Returning to class, the goddess Tao Zi didn't give him a good face. Even little Yingzi spoke up for that kid, which was too much. Fang Yifan, you're sick. Qiao Yingzi was a bit angry. For whose good was this? Fang Yifan made such a big fuss at the oath-taking ceremony. If he had another fight with Gu Han, the school wouldn't have fired him. Gu Han sneered, even now, you still feel like it's someone else's fault and don't even know how to reflect on yourself. What do you mean? Fang Yifan gritted his teeth, you've caused me so much trouble. It's still my fault. Do you still want to face it? I think what Fang Yifan said also makes some sense. Gu Han is a bit unreasonable and too aggressive. Someone in the crowd was convinced by Fang Yifan. Gu Han said indifferently, you pretended to be unconscious. When Teacher Li said that the professionals couldn't come, and I was the only person capable of giving you first aid at that time, you could have opened your eyes completely, but you didn't. Fang Yifan felt a little guilty and insisted, so what? You did it on purpose. Qiao Yingzi suddenly realized. She looked at Fang Yifan incredulously and said, I thought you pretended to faint because you were afraid of being punished by the school and Uncle Fang and Aunt Tong. It turns out you did this to make Gu Han lose face. Fang Yifan, you're going too far. Qiao Yingzi couldn't help but feel angry. Fang Yifan, I never expected you to be this kind of person. Huang Zhitao's eyes also showed a faint disdain. The plan was punctured by someone, and the goddess also disliked herself. Fang Yifan smashed the jar and shouted loudly. What's wrong with me? He can only mock me, don't let me fight back. I'm absolutely right. Ha! Gu Han smiled, if you had fought back against me based on your own abilities, regardless of whether it was successful or not, I wouldn't look down on you like this. But you're not. I didn't intend to care about you, it was your mother who cried and begged me, saying that you were the only son and asked me to help you before I went. Ah! Qiao Yingzi remembered the scene at that time, looking unbearable. Aunt Tong did cry very sadly at that time. In her eyes, Aunt Tong Wenjie has always been a shrewd and strong person, and she has never seen such a fragile Aunt Tong before. Don't say it anymore. Fang Yifan felt a bit regretful and didn't want to continue listening. If you have a little conscience instead of thinking about your childish revenge plan, you should wake up at that time to reassure your mother. Fang Yifan's conscience pricked, but more importantly, he couldn't hold on to his pride. He increased his volume and said, don't say anything. Gu Han ignored him, however, the fact is that you woke up not for your friends and family, but for fear of being messed up and losing face. If I were you, what I would do now is not to trouble someone, but to apologize to someone. Gu Han's words fell to the ground, and the whole room fell silent. Fang Yifan's face was burning with pain. He regretted it, really regretted it. He really shouldn't have caused trouble for Gu Han, but the further away he got from him, the better. Outside the teacher's door, out of concern for Fang Yifan, Tong Wenjie and Fang Yuan did not chat with their old classmate Ji Xingli. They found their friend Song Qian to accompany her to the classroom and left silently. The two of them arrived at a quiet place, and only then did Tong Wenjie's tears fall again. She casually wiped away her tears and forced a smile to say to Song Qian, Qian, that Gu Han is the child who borrowed money from your house, right? Song Qian's face was complex, with a faint hint of red on her face. She didn't know what to say, but silently nodded. That's great. Tong Wenjie murmured to herself, even if anyone is half as sensible as him, I would be satisfied. Now Tong Wenjie's heart is full of favor towards Gu Han. Even if she made Fang Yifan look so ugly, with his just words, Tong Wenjie wouldn't blame him. Qian, one day when Gu Han is free, you can bring him and Yingzi to my house for dinner. I want to thank him well. Speaking of eating, Song Qian suddenly thought that she could avoid Gu Han for a while, but not for a lifetime. At least on the dining table at home, she and Gu Han still have to face each other. Thinking of this, Song Qian felt her scalp tingling and didn't know what to do. 010, Huang Zhitao, who is afraid of ghosts. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. But if she asked Gu Han to move out, Song Qian really didn't have that face. It was originally her mistake, and Gu Han was completely innocent. Qian, why are you absent-minded? What kind of trouble have you encountered? Tong Wenjie asked with concern. It's nothing. Song Qian quickly replied, with a bitter smile in her heart. Is she showing such obvious behavior? Both Yingzi and Tong Wenjie noticed her abnormality. It seems that she really needs to do a good job in psychological construction and completely forget about last night's incident. Song Qian thought this way, and when Gu Han and Qiao Yingzi came back for lunch, she did indeed do it without showing any abnormality. Watching Gu Han eat silently and say nothing, Song Qian finally breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Let this matter pass quietly. On her way to school in the afternoon, Qiao Yingzi silently rolled her eyes as she watched Gu Han walking beside her, attracting countless girls to turn around. Butterfly flowers know how to attract girls. Hey, Gu Han. Qiao Yingzi deliberately made a nonchalant appearance. Tao Zi and I are going to the movie tonight, and we have an extra ticket. Do you want to go together? Quickly, she added, don't think too much, I just wanted to invite you along to thank you for letting me go this morning. They had originally made an agreement with Fang Yifan, but after this morning's incident, they were not willing to deal with Fang Yifan. Gu Han thought for a moment and said, to thank me, should I decide what movie to watch? He thought of the electronic version of the complete collection of stolen pens that he checked in this morning. Later, when he searched online, he found that many classic entertainment works from his past life had not appeared in this world, and there were also many more works that he had not heard of. But how good those works are, he hasn't had time to see them, and now it's just an opportunity. Speaking, Gu Han took out his phone. But the movie tickets have already been booked, Qiao Yingzi pouted, a bit reluctant, as it was her favorite Mission Impossible 6. I want to watch Ghost Cry. Gu Han quickly selected a horror film, which was said to be a phenomenal work and received rave reviews, stunning hundreds of people. Thief of the Pen is a horror novel. Let's first take a look at the quality of horror movies in this world. That famous horror movie. Qiao Yingzi's face turned a little pale as she muttered, there's no action movie as good as a horror movie. It's just scary and boring. Gu Han saw through her thoughts and joked, elongating his tone, you dare not go and look, Yingzi. I didn't expect you to be so timid. Who said I dare not look anymore? Qiao Yingzi was provoked by him and immediately said, I'm not afraid of ghosts. Those are all fake. Gu Han curled his lips and operated on his phone a few times. The tickets have been bought, 3 tickets. Don't forget to call Huang Zhitao later. Qiao Yingzi had a tearless expression on her face. Now, it's great that she not only sold herself, but also her good friend Tao Zi. After school, Qiao Yingzi forcefully pulled Huang Zhitao, who was both scared and hesitant, and the 3 of them arrived at the cinema. It's all your fault, why did you promise to watch some horror movie? When entering, Huang Zhitao held Qiao Yingzi's arm and complained softly. She turned around and glanced at Gu Han, who was going to buy popcorn, and jokingly said, I'll be sitting next to Gu Han later. Don't compete with me. Who's competing with you? Qiao Yingzi rolled her eyes and thought of the Ghost Crying movie review. She stiffened for less than a second, no, Tao Zi, I'm afraid. I also want to sit next to Gu Han. When Gu Han returned, he was held by 2 girls with extremely high looks, half pulled, and sandwiched in the middle, sitting in the middle of the cinema. I don't know how many people cast envious glances at Gu Han. At the beginning of the movie, Qiao Yingzi and Huang Zhitao were very engrossed, but Gu Han's mouth began to twitch. The protagonist, who is alone, rented a quaint mansion at a low price. After moving in, the eerie cries of the woman occasionally rang out, and memories of the Republic of China era also appeared in her dreams. Isn't this the beginning of the 101st installment of 100 domestic super bad ghost films? Although the camera is beautiful and the music is brilliant, it cannot stop the vulgar plot. The so-called phenomenon level ghost films in this world are at this level. That's all. Gu Han sat expressionless and soon fell asleep. Ah! A loud scream woke up Gu Han, but before he could react, he tightly grasped it with a soft little hand in his right hand and pulled it onto his thigh. The owner of the small hand also leaned tightly against his side. A faint and elegant aroma drifted into his nose. It has a sweet peach flavor. Gu Han raised his eyebrows and his hand seemed to move unintentionally. After leaving school, Qiao Yingzi and Huang Zhitao both changed into school uniforms and wore 2 JK plaid dresses of the same style as their best friends. However, Qiao Yingzi wore transparent stockings, and Huang Zhitao wore white stockings. Gu Han slightly turned his head to look at Huang Zhitao's beautiful profile, which was completely focused on the movie. He tilted his head back and closed his eyes again. Okay, this movie isn't too bad either. Afterwards, Huang Zhitao erupted into several screams. After each scream, he tightly grasped Gu Han's hand and his body became tighter and tighter. However, this intense commotion did not awaken Gu Han even once. Well, not even once. After more than an hour, the ending theme song of the movie played leisurely. The tragic love story of the protagonist moved Qiao Yingzi and Huang Zhitao to tears, and they enthusiastically discussed the plot while leaning aside. Until the corner of his eye caught a glimpse of the people passing by who had left their seats, they all looked towards him without hesitation. Huang Zhitao then lowered his head and looked down at his thigh, as well as the large hand that he was holding tightly on top, which did not belong to him. Ah! Huang Zhitao exclaimed in surprise and quickly stood up, blushing over her fair face, her heart pounding uncontrollably. How could she do such a thing? Gu Han woke up in shock and said, What's wrong? The movie is finally over. He stood up and yawned, looking at the two of them in a puzzled tone. The cinema hasn't turned on the heating, why are you two blushing so much? Huang Zhitao's face turned even redder, stuttering and unable to speak. Qiao Yingzi, in order to divert her attention from her best friend, the villain first reported, What's wrong with you? It was you who wanted to watch a horror movie, but you fell asleep after watching the beginning. She wrinkled her small nose and looked at Gu Han with suspicion. Don't be wrong. The person who is truly afraid of ghosts is actually you. Gu Han rubbed her head and said, You think too much. I fell asleep because this movie was too boring. I can almost guess the end by watching the beginning. Qiao Yingzi continued to look at Gu Han with a skeptical gaze. I don't believe it, let me push the plot. Gu Han casually deduced the plot. Qiao Yingzi and Huang Zhitao listened with increasingly surprised eyes and a shocked expression on their faces. Gu Han's deduction is closely related to the plot of the movie, and some of the plots are even more vivid and reasonable than the original plot, which also fills in the bug that the movie did not round out.